Hi, I'm Mike. I'm with the Diabetic. This is our first video, and we intend to provide more to the diabetic community. I am a father to my daughter, who, of course, who was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes about 18 months ago, and she is now 12. So it has been quite the journey for our family and obviously for our daughter, Reagan. And we wanted to share with you at least our recommendations. If you've recently been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes or a family member, we wanted to share with you, these are kind of our best practices in terms of things to do now that you've received this diagnosis. Obviously, we empathize with all of you that are watching this. It's a very difficult thing to learn, for sure. So, from the moment that you kind of received this diagnosis, our number one recommendation is to find your doctor. And I know that is easier said than done in many circumstances. Your geography limits the availability of endocrinologists or pediatric endocrinologists, for sure, which is quite the specialty, and insurance, obviously, and the ability to pay for those services. But don't settle for mediocrity. And so our daughter, when she was first diagnosed, we went through I think a handful of clinicians at Seattle Children's Hospital, and we'll continue to kind of iterate and we're not going to settle. We're going to always find the doctor that's best for our daughter, and I'm sure that all of you feel the same. And and as our daughter obviously gets older, what we're trying to do is to really ensure that she's always protective of her own health, and that that she feels empowered in terms of not just accepting again, mediocrity, if you will. And so find your doctor, number one. Number two, measure mental health. As soon as our daughter was diagnosed, my wife and I, Samantha, we kind of came up with a very a minimally viable plan, MVP, if you're in the tech space, but an MVP from a plan perspective. And the first thing we recognized was that our daughter was 11 years old, and my wife and I don't have diabetes, and we really don't have anybody in our immediate family that has it either. But we understand that's significant news to receive, particularly if you're young. And so we couldn't even imagine all the thoughts and feelings that she must have been experiencing, knowing the ones that we were experiencing. And so we immediately agreed that we needed to find a child psychologist who ideally had some experience in terms of working with children who have received news like this. And our daughter has been I think in talk therapy, I think a week after that diagnosis, and we'll continue that. And she has shared with us that it's been a positive experience. But if you've received that information, and again, this obviously assumes that there's availability in that insurance and all those things are there. But measure mental health, number two. Number three, find clinical trials. I think when we received the information, not sure about your experience, but we didn't receive a lot of you've got a diagnosis of type 1 diabetes, and this is what it means, and here's CGM and all these other things. But we just started doing our own research, and I strongly suggest that you look into clinical trials. They're novel treatments that are being tested consistently, and so look, and I don't know if they're a fit or not, but I would say that make sure that you look to see what's available out there, because there might be something that you deem is a fit for your loved one or for yourself. JDRF website, clinicaltrials.gov is another place to look. TrialNet, for sure, trialnet.org. You can Google NIH, National Institutes of Health. You can just Google NIH and clinical trials, or FDA and clinical trials, and then Innodia, INNODIA. And you can Google that and you could find some clinical trials. Number 4, use social media. I know but use social media to your advantage in this case. I'm sharing with you what we believe are kind of the most immediate best practices to consider once you've received diagnosis. And there are, plenty of other people that have gone through the same experience, and they may have some other pieces to share that we're not, that might be, a good fit for you. And so I would suggest Reddit, and then look for subreddits around type 1 diabetes. There's a few of them. I know that, there are 3. Diabetes_T1 is a good subreddit. Type 1 diabetes is a great subreddit, and diabetes in general is a great subreddit. And so I think those are great places to look. And then, you may find some local communities on Facebook in terms of supporting type 1 diabetes. And again, I would suggest that you look there. And then number 5, the 5th and last, is have a plan. Well, we're not preppers. I'm not a prepper, if you're familiar with that terminology. I do believe in prior planning prevents poor performance, exposes a little bit of my military background, but you have to start considering now and planning for worst case scenarios of when potentially, if there's a natural disaster or some apocalyptic moment or event, that you can't access insulin, then what? And so we, like many others in this community, we have a what we call anyways an apocalyptic insulin supply. And so all of our injection pens and all the vials, you'll be left with some insulin in each of those that you're not using, even if it's less than a whole unit. It doesn't matter. We keep all of that stuff, all of the extra insulin that we have, we keep in our second refrigerator in our garage. And I think that it's important you start thinking about these things now. And I would also consider finding a refrigerator. We have a refrigerator, smaller refrigerator, but can hold all of the insulin in that particular refrigerator we found on Amazon, and can run off of 120 volt typical household outlet. And it can also operate off of a 12 volt like cigarette outlet, in cars. And it can also actually has some cords where we can run it off solar panels. And so I know there's a lot of things to consider, after diagnosis, but it's never too early to start thinking of what if, what's the plan. And so I'm educated as a chemical and biomedical engineer, and so this kind of fits within my wheelhouse. But do you know how to make insulin from a pig? Well, it may sound like a joke. You can Google it. That's how it started. And I actually downloaded the the patent, the original patent for that. And worst case scenario, I'm pretty confident that I could probably put something together there. But again, just make sure that you have a plan. So post-diagnosis, number 1 for us, find your doctor that fits for you. Number 2, measure mental health, either yours, your loved one, whoever's received the diagnosis. Find clinical trials. Number 3. Number 4, use social media to your advantage. And then the last one, have a plan. If you can't access insulin, for an extended period of time, what are you going to do? And make sure that you've educated yourself on that in terms of some options that are available, because they're out there. So this is what these are our recommendations at the Diabetic, and we'd love to hear comments from everybody below. Please help us out. We're just starting this family blog, if you will, and my daughter is participating, and our son and my wife. So please subscribe. That'd be great. And looking forward to connecting with each of you via the comments. Thanks.